think I'm ready. I was going to do I am going to do chapters 14 and 15, but I want to start out first by putting things in perspective, I think. Because, in Genesis, God created the world. He made sun, he made light, he gave us plants, he gave us seeds. He gave us everything we need. And in nature's world, we call that a habitat. So then you need a habitat in order to live, to raise children, to have shelter, and so forth. So he gave it all to us. And we should keep that in mind as we go through this book and read what is happening to us and what we're let happening to us. So years ago, we ate more from our own gardens, so we had more control. And we prepared the foods by canning and freezing and drying, and we only added what we wanted. And maybe it was too much salt or too much sugar, I don't know. It was different for everybody. But anyway, that's something to keep in mind, that how we've drifted from what God gave us and his intent for us to have and where we are today. So the book tells us that the food industry deliberately thinks about how to get us to buy more food. So they put sugar, salt, and fat in it. Why not? We love all that stuff. Just think of a bag of chips, how fast it disappears. So anyway, so we have to think about what we're doing with our life. And awareness and knowledge are very powerful tools. So keeping that in mind, we think about struggling, and the page turned here, to take on new behaviors so that we end up doing the right thing. And in our busy lives, it's easy for us to say, I've worked too hard. When I get home, I have to take care of the kids. I have to do this, I have to do that. So we turn to those boxed and packaged foods, which have all the extra ingredients that we do not need and that are destroying our lives and causing future problems for our generations to come. Because, and if you read the book, it says that is passed on by our cells doing what do they call it? Epigenetics. So, in that whole chapter 14, it talks about how we're destroying ourselves or how we're letting industry destroy because they make it easy for us. They're manipulating us. So the first thing I would start out telling you is that you need to read labels. So if they're adding sodium and sugar and fats, that's on the labels. Now, my favorite food in the whole world and the healthiest is Quaker oats. These. And if you read that label, and they're all set up the same way, first you get total fat, oatmeal has none, cholesterol has none, sodium, it has none, and total carbs are 27. But it has a great deal of fiber. So when you eat fiber, that fills you up faster and it lasts longer. So you don't get a high like a sugar and then it goes down. It sticks with you and carries you through the day. So those are the kinds of the preliminary things that you need to look at. And you'll be amazed at what the labels have on them. Like I looked at a can of condensed tomato soup and it had over, I think it was 550 milligrams of sodium. Now that's per serving, and the can has 2 servings. So if you eat the whole can, you're getting over 1,000 milligrams of sodium. Now, later on, I'll talk about how you can find out how much you should be eating in a day's diet, okay? So then we go to chapter 15, me, myself, and my epigenetic environment. It says that environments regulate gene activity and expression of a response to both internal and external signals. Our body's antibodies in response to viruses like measles or chickenpox, they create new genes by recombination. So the genetic material is broken up and joined together as another genetic material. The same thing happens with our thoughts. So, well, I guess I didn't say, when you get, like we used to get vaccinations for measles and chickenpox, that changes some of the genetics in us. So we can also change our mental ability, not with a shot, but by just making different environmental changes and following them. So toxic food environments come from animals that are raised in a horrible situation. They're not really fed grains or grass. And here I'll mention to you that if you go to, like my favorite place to go is Common Market and to something called Sprouts Farmers Market, and that's on Old Route 40. And they label everything. It's so easy to tell. Like I bought a steak and it said fed grains and grasses only, right on the package. So it's easy to shop there. And I bought apples, and then I ended up turning them back in because I found another display that had organic. So that they label everything. And it's really easy to follow that when you're trying to be good. I will say that changing over to a completely new diet is going to be very foreign. And it won't be easy. I've been a diabetic for 63 years, since the age of 7, and I'm now 70. So I didn't get to the point I needed to be for a long time, but I had lots of help. And with technology, like an insulin pump, like this thing, it tells me everything I need to know. So here's my numbers right now. It's 133. I don't know if you can see it. But anyway, technology has been a wonderful thing, and it has coached me along. So, and at this point, I want to interject a story about my background. I met Lucinda when I joined Calvary Church, and I went to work there, and I knew God had given me certain gifts, but I'd worked a career, so I didn't take the opportunity to use those gifts. And it was arts and crafts, and it was cooking and a couple of other things. But one week, Lucinda asked me to do a testimony in front of the 3 services about why I did what I did at church. And, I thought, oh, well, this is going to be a challenge. I'm not sure why. And I just sat down. I kept thinking about it day after day. And I heard God speak to me at that time. And he said, JoAnn, food is not your enemy. It is not your enemy. Cooking is a gift I gave you, and I gave you other gifts so that you could help other people. And it just came to me just like that. And I had no problem doing a testimony, but it changed my life. It definitely did, because I got things in perspective. So things like that can happen too, that help you with making decisions. So anyway, I think I've covered most of everything in the book. I think the most important thing in chapter 15 is when she tells us that our bad habits can be inherited by our generations to come. Like the genes carry forward. It's just like being a diabetic. Mine came from my mother's family, or having heart disease or colon cancer. All those are carried forward from your parents and grandparents. So the same thing happens with this food epidemic. So anyway, so that was my summary of those chapters. Now, as a couple of health factors, there's this book, and it's called The Calorie King. And it's like $11 or $12, but it gives you absolutely everything you need. It gives you every type of food, whether it's vegetables or candy or ice cream, there's, meat, everything. And then it even puts a category in here for fast foods. So if you go to a fast food, you know how much salt and fat and so forth that you're getting. But you can get this on Amazon. It's about $11 or $12. But again, it's called the Calorie King, Calorie, Fat, and Carbohydrate Counter. You don't necessarily have to use carbohydrates. You can use calories instead. And the difference between carbohydrates and calories is that some foods, if you take a chicken breast, it has calories, but it doesn't have one carb. Both of them provide your body with energy. So it's probably easier for you to use calories. The reason diabetics use carbs is that's how our insulin is injected, our dosages, based on the number of carbs you eat. So that sounds a little complicated, but yeah, I think if you could get your hands on one of these books, it would open your eyes, because it tells you how much sodium you should have with a certain calorie count. You know, you can go 1,200, 1,500, up to 2,000, although 2,000 is a lot of calories. And it tells you about like the salt and the fat, how much of that you should have each day. So it's a very, very helpful book. And it might be the first thing you do. You might just want to get this book and look at it and get an idea of what you're facing.